For most people, doing low carb is fairly simple. Basically cut out all the high carb foods, the breads, the potatoes, the sweets, and everything else, and stick to meat and veggies. But for a type 1 diabetic, it's much more complicated because it's a very manual disease, and a lot of things in your body change. So when you start, don't just go low carb, but also keep these 4 tips in mind. First, you want to be checking your blood sugar constantly. Now I know that's a little cheesy because that's exactly what your doctor says, but especially when you're transitioning from a high carb diet to a low carb diet, this is essential. Because when you do that, your body's going to be going through some changes. Your body's transitioning from burning carbs for fuel to burning fat for fuel because you're taking all those carbs out. And in doing so, your insulin needs are going to change. They may go up, they may go down, but the only way you'll know is if you test your blood sugar constantly before you eat, after you eat, between meals, all the time, in order to establish what your new baseline is. And with that, tip number 2 is keep glucose tabs on hand at all times. When I started out, and I'm not the only one, I experienced lots of lows. And that was because my insulin sensitivity went up. And because my insulin sensitivity went up, my needs went down. And so I was taking too much insulin and I was going low. If I didn't have glucose tabs on hand at all times, then I might have been SOL when my blood sugars are going crazy. You need to keep glucose tabs on hand all the time just in case those lows happen and be able to correct them when they do. Why do I say glucose tabs? Well, I say glucose tabs because they're not tempting. They kind of taste like chalk, they're not very pleasant to eat, and they're very precise. So you're always sure exactly what you're getting. And with other stuff like if you had a bag of chips or some cookies or some candy, that's a lot more tempting, it's a lot more delicious, and you're very prone to going overboard with it. So stick to glucose tabs, keep them on hand at all times, and test that blood sugar constantly. So third thing is biggest mistake people make, and that is bolusing for protein. When you switch to a low carb diet, you're taking the carbs out. And we're told that carbs are what you need to take insulin for, and that's true. But once you take those out far enough, you need to start worrying about that protein, because protein also causes a rise in glucose. Not as high and not as much, it's a lot slower, but it causes a rise nonetheless, and you need to account for that. If you don't, you're bound to have a blood sugar higher than you thought you would. You need to start counting for that protein. I'll get into detail on the how-to of that in another video, but just keep that in mind. More details on that and a lot of other stuff bring me to my 4th tip. And this is actually the most important tip of all. Save the best for last, is get the book. Get Dr. Bernstein's Diabetes Solution. It is the Bible on managing low carb as a type 1 diabetic. I understand it's thick, it's a little dry of a read, there's a lot in it, but it is the most comprehensive guide for type 1 diabetes and low carb out there. And it's made by a guy that has been doing it for decades and decades and decades with great success and with lots of patients doing the same thing. So, let's recap. First, test your blood sugar constantly. Make sure you're not going too low, make sure you're not going too high, and be sure to correct and change your insulin needs as you go. Number 2, keep glucose tabs on hand at all times. Make sure you don't go too low and you have a way up if you do. Number 3, bolus for protein. You're going to have to start doing that once you cut the carbs out because those will rise your blood sugar. And number 4, best for last, get the book. It is the best $20 you'll ever spend. You can get it off Amazon, get it in a few days. Trust me, it is a lifesaver. So that's all I have for now, everyone. If you like this video, if you want to see more, be sure to hit the like button, subscribe to the channel, like the page, and do everything you gotta do to spread the word on this so we can all share how we tame type 1.